Hello everyone on this bright and obviously quite sunny day. In the future I may need to get some different filters for my windows here. But this is Sharon Alexander with Alexander Arts, and here I am. It's not the end of October because it's the November the 1st, but that means Inktober's over, and I didn't get Inktober completely finished because a small furry animal known as Binky the cat decided that I was going to be furniture yesterday, and unfortunately demanded the use of one of my arms. But, at the request of a few people, I have decided that I will share what I did do in October and just do the last page from yesterday with you. So here we go. Now this is something I learned to do last year, to just go ahead, print out that little Inktober list that they send out every year from the Inktober's website, which unfortunately I don't remember the website. I'll try to remember to link it in the descriptions. But the first one was dreams. And I did some things differently this year. Sometimes in the past I have just done black and white, regardless of whether it was a pen, marker, whatever I was using. This year I went with some of the colored ones, and this was a little experiment because I had a white brush pitt artist pen from Faber-Castell. Love their brush pens, by the way. They're beautiful brush pens. But I had a white one that I wanted to try out, and it may or may not show up here, but I used it to sort of outline the swirling air currents, because what's everyone's favorite dream? Flying. Or at least it was mine. As a kid, I loved having dreams where I would just walk out the door and then jump up and fly around. When we dream, we have monsters, and for some reason giant flying goldfish were quite prominent in my dreams, so I drew a giant flying goldfish for dreams. Number two, I was maybe a little overly proud of. Not entirely sure that the red on this counts as ink. I think that these are actually a acrylic marker, so that would actually maybe count as paint. But I've seen other YouTubers this year who would do ink and then go back and watercolor with it. I've seen a couple that just flat out did gouache or even acrylic, so I don't think anyone's going to fuss too much if I used an acrylic paint pen for this, considering I was quite happy with spiders on day 2. Day 3 was a path, and I believe this was all done with micron pens, just black. Probably brush pen where I did that to make it stand out a little bit. And I would spend quite a bit of time on this, not because of the complexity of the picture, although it is fairly complex, but because I couldn't settle on any one image. I kept doing these winding paths through trees, lots of ferns, and finally I said, no, let's just make it simple. And I decided it would be that the goal was to make it look like the path goes off into the distance. That seemed to have worked pretty well. For some reason, when I saw the word dodge for number 4, I immediately heard that character from The Matrix say, dodge this. And so naturally I had to. It's not perfect. It doesn't quite look like her, but probably enough that you get the idea where this is from, just before she gets rid of that AI program. Map. Doesn't get any simpler than that. Just a map. Just a little fantasy map. Little edge of the water, little town, some trees and things. And usually you see a big compass on maps. Mine's not very circular, but I also try to do this as freehand as possible, with as few props, I guess you could call them, although I did use a ruler to get these straight lines here on the edge. Can't be a straight edge otherwise. Excuse me. Still having a lot of the October allergies hanging on. Number 6's word was golden. And among these Pitt pens, which I think they count as ink because they are ink pens, the word golden immediately brought to mind a game called Skyrim, in which they have a number of these golden statues that you can sell for gold. And I just immediately thought of that golden statue. Drip. And as complicated as this looks, I immediately, the moment I thought of drip, I thought of a sketch I had done well over 10 years ago where I had a dripping sink where I worked, and on my break I just had this drip dripping down the page, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to have the words themselves just kind of dripping down the page? So there we go, with another one of those beautiful Pitt pens, the bit brush pens from Faber-Castell. I used them quite a bit this year. This was one of those giggle moments. Toad. I looked at toad. I looked at just a toad. I looked at toads on mushrooms. I looked at toads from Toad Hall. I looked at all kinds of toads. And then I actually saw this photograph, I believe it was from a reserve in Arizona, of a Sonoran desert toad. And there it was, just sitting here with this expression on its face, one arm kind of in front of it a little bit, with the finger extended. And for some reason, I immediately saw that crazy meme of this dapper older gentleman, and it always starts off with, I don't always, and they would fill in their blank, but when I do. Well, in this case, I don't always art a meme, but when I do, there is a very distinguished frog involved. Number 9 isn't as polished as some things I've done. I was in a hurry that particular day, and I had a hard time coming up with something that I could do to convey the idea of bouncing or bounce. However, having had these little critters before, and having seen the video of the man with the ferret who had all these pit balls, and he threw them down the stairs, and the ferret goes wild. There is nothing bouncier than a ferret who's about to weasel war dance on everything. Now for this, the fortune. Fortune and glory. Fortune and glory. I don't really have a fortune. I'm not really interested in glory. However, I think I do own a fortune in art supplies. So that would be my fortune, and that was what I drew. I had some paintings hung up there, and brushes, and some paint tubes, and paint pans, and markers, and pencils, and varnishes. I threw in a glass of water just because you can't do watercolors without water, markers. Yeah, if I actually added up how much all that stuff in that picture costed, it's probably a small fortune. Number 11 was wander. And I didn't want to do a whole lot of Lord of the Rings, but the first thing that comes to mind is the poem from Lord of the Rings, not all who wander are lost. And some of us are looking for our coffee cup. Which I found. I have my coffee cup off to the side here, as horrible and ugly as my coffee cup may look. It's cinnamon and spices, and my own version of pumpkin spice, just because I happen to like pumpkin spice. If you don't like pumpkin spice, fine, drink something else. But I wanted to come up with something that wasn't distinctly Tolkienish. So I went wandering through the internet and eventually came across this beautiful vista, however you want to say it, of these mountains and this little lake surrounded by pine trees. And I thought, oh, yeah, someone who's wandering might come across this. That's pretty nice. Number 12, spicy. And there is nothing spicier than a big pile of peppers. So I went searching the internet, and of course I came across piles and piles of peppers and used them as my inspiration for this. Tried to get some of the shininess from the peppers. That turned out pretty good. Rise. This one took a little bit of thinking because rise, okay, rising, the sun rises, but it's hard to convey that in black and white ink. And finally I came across Phoenix Rising, and I thought, oh, there we go, rising from the ashes. Number 13. 14, I was feeling lazy. It said castle, so I made a sandcastle. Nothing simpler than that. Just took out my colored brush pens and drew a sandcastle. I don't think I used any micron in this at all. In fact, I think these were all Faber-Castell's brush pens. Dagger. Daggers can be fun. I don't really care for the ones that are obviously nothing more than decorational, completely useless. These, I believe, may have been Talia's daggers from the Hobbit movie that was made. I liked the movie as long as I pretend that the book doesn't exist, but I really do like her daggers, so why not her daggers? Grasses. This was an alternative, and I'll go back to the first because I don't remember what it was supposed to be for that. It was supposed to be angels, demons, and saddles for days 16, 17, and 18. I don't like drawing people, and I really just don't enjoy drawing people, and the saddle didn't really thrill me either. However, a fellow artist that I know and have followed and drawn along with for years drew up an alternative list for October. And to be honest, I only used it once because I just didn't want to draw people. I didn't care if they were devils, demons, or judges from Wall Street. I didn't care. I just didn't want to do people. So her 16, 17, 18, she did hers in a 3-day. So you could have 1, 2, 3. You could do one of these, all of these together, or all of them individually. She didn't care. But this is Sony Alcorn Hinder, otherwise known as Bohemian Weasel. And her 16 through 18 was grasses, nettle, or nightshade. So, as an alternative, that's not great to me. I like plants. Anyone who's seen me paint knows I love to do flowers and grasses and vines, bugs, butterflies, birds. So this seemed right up my alley. So I drew some grasses, and I drew one nightshade, and I looked up nettle to see exactly how nettle worked, and I did nettle, and I said, okay, there we go. Grasses, nettle, and nightshade. Almost sounds like a song. Grasses, nettle, and nightshade. Sorry. This, number 19, plump. Now, I also follow another artist that goes with Sketchbook School. Wonderful thing, and they do a draw along every Thursday. It's 11 o'clock my time. That's Central Time on Thursday. So the day was plump. He wasn't doing Inktober, but they were doing draw-alongs for kittens, and he posted up a picture of a kitten, and you're supposed to freehand draw or sketch a kitten. And I thought, you know, that works out really well, because I was thinking about maybe doing a plump pigeon or something like that, you know. And I thought, well, wait a moment, what about a nice plump kitten? Nice fuzzy plump kitten. Thought that turned out pretty nicely, actually. Sorry. Great when everything dies down. Now here I took a deviation from my usual routine simply because of it being frost. Now I could use a black pen and draw frost in black on white paper, but it just didn't feel frosty enough. So I pulled out the white brush pen, which doesn't get a lot of use as an actual pen. I usually use it to cover up my mistakes. It does an okay job with that. And I took the ink markers, my alcohol ink markers, a little collection of these things here. And this is a collection of several different companies. I do have some of the ever so popular, and now they've gone completely out of my head, the fancy one that is so expensive. Not that one. But I think you know who they are. I'm sure that anybody who uses those knows exactly who I'm talking about. The expensive ones. That one's a collection of my first set from Arteza, which is about as cheap as you can get. They don't have a brush tip. They have a bullet brush. I don't like them as much, but that didn't matter because the other side's a big fat square tip. perfect for covering an entire page with color. And that's exactly what I did. I colored this with this blue that they have here. I think they called theirs navy, even though it doesn't look like navy to me. Nope, it's just called blue 12. Either way, blue 12. And took that brush marker and I looked up how frost goes on a window and just kind of frosted the page. It worked. I noticed that my pen was nice and strong here, but as I kept going, it kind of faded out. I don't know if it was just because it was open stock and already half used or what the deal was. Chains. Yeah, I could have done a lot of things with chains, but most of the things I came up with chains were either controversial or complicated, and I finally just said, fine, I'm just drawing a chain. That's it. Number 21, a chain. Scratchy. I also had a little problem with scratchy because I didn't want to substitute it for itchy. It's hard to convey scratchy. So I finally took my brush pen and just lightly scratched it across the page. And then I took one of my finer microns and scratched it across the page just to make it look like one big itchy spot. And here again, I thought I didn't want a white background on my page. I wanted the celestial bodies of the universe for number 23 to really stand out. And I didn't want to draw them in black and white either. But here's a selection of celestial bodies in space. Maybe I should have added some twinkly stars in the background. Ah, well. Sort of the same deal for shallow. I had a hard time conveying shallow without some sort of color. And I wanted it to look shallow. And I found these beautiful pictures of these shallow ocean pools and oceans. And I thought, And also, I don't really have a lot of turquoise. So I had to kind of mix my blue and green. Again, those ink markers, they're still ink, they count, those ink markers, and kind of try to convey the shallow sea. I don't think these clouds worked very well. I used a darker marker to convey the blue parts, trying to get the clouds in there. It didn't work, so I went over it with the white marker and tried to fade it out, and well, at least the ocean part worked out well for shallow. Dangerous. Oh boy, did this one take me a while, and not in the actual doing, but in the conception. Because there are so many dangerous things. There's sharks, there's spiders, there's scorpions, there's knives. At one point I even considered a raven with a knife, and I thought, it didn't grab me. And then I thought, wraiths. Wraiths are dangerous. Cloaked individuals are dangerous. You don't know who they are. In this case, I gave this one a bit of a sword and just kind of made him dark and eerie and mysterious, dangerous. Remove. Well, if you're removing something, you're erasing it, so quite simple, an eraser. And I did kind of the reverse effect to get sort of like it's reversing the page, or removing the color on the page. Beast. I actually did have fun with this because I'm like, beast. What kind of beast? You know what? Let's just make up a beast. Let's give it horns. I thought it would be cute to give it like deer ears and tried to give it kind of a feline-ish, lionish face. And then just for the fun of it, I made it a green-eyed monster. Sparkle. I'm not sure how well this is showing up on the page because of the shadows. Let's create some shadows of my own that will either help or make it worse. But to get the sparkle, I don't have sparkly pens or sparkly ink really. I've got some metallics. So I made a darker blue-gray background with one of those ink markers and went searching and eventually found pictures of sparkly stuff going across the page. Probably supposed to be a background for something. And kind of imitated it, trying to give it that bit of sparkle, move it around a little bit. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but it was the best I could do short of pulling out my children's sparkly glue and putting it on the page, which usually just makes a mess. 29 was massive. Try to ignore my extra line here. It didn't erase very well, but I thought, massive. Nothing gets more massive than a mammoth. Or I think this is actually not a mammoth, but another one of the closely related sort. Big old tusks on those, massive. rush, and boy, aren't we all rushed when it's got to be time. So time it is, time it was, and time there it goes, as time just rushes by. And the last one is fire. And for fire, I have thought that I'm going to use those ink markers again. Sorry. Yes, maybe not traditionally ink, but, you know, the alcohol markers are kind of a new-ish thing on the market as far as supplies go. When I say new-ish, I mean 100 years ago they didn't exist. And technically Inktober didn't exist that long ago, but the original was supposed to be ink pens, dipping pens, pen ink on brushes, that kind of thing. I don't really care. I'm going to do this, and I'm probably going to wish I had brought my little piece of paper that I usually stick behind this to keep it from going through onto the next page. Don't have any small pieces. Oh, there we go, a small piece of paper. All I need just to keep it from bleeding onto the next page, because I'm going to use these, and they will do that on thin paper, which this kind of is. I've actually used watercolor on this before, and it really wasn't too bad. Maybe sometime I'll actually do a video and just show you the rest of this book. Maybe when it's done. I don't have, compared to the rest of the book, I don't have that much more to go. Maybe next year. Anyway, I'm just going to do this as a quick find, and I'm just going to literally just put flames up. So let's get some of those hot blue flames to start off with. Just because flames kind of fun like that. It just jiggles and wiggles and jumps up in places, sort of like a flamenco, Spanish flamingo dance. Kind of going up and down. Usually the hottest parts of it are blue. So we'll start off with blue. And then they usually go with a pale yellow as they get a little higher up. So again, just simple, quick, because I've already rambled on with this for a while, and I'm sure you've all got other things you want to watch. Maybe with music in the background, since I didn't arrange any this time. I just kind of got going. Okay, that's, what is that? This is one of the Arteza ones. It's quartz white. Now let's get something a little more yellow. How about Narcissus? Sounds good and yellowish. Do a little bit of a border with that. Here we go, a little bit of border with that. Let's have a little bit of these fire leap ups. Fire likes to leap up, doesn't it? There we go. And now something a little more orangish. This one calls itself orange. I don't know that it really is. This is a Royal and Lankel called Azure. They've been okay. They have nice enough colors, but at least in my area, it's not something that you get a lot of. I have a lot of ones that I have just gone down to, say, Hobby Lobby, places like that, and just picked up their brand. I have ones from Michael's. As far as markers go, other than the shapes of the markers themselves, the grips, and the tips, the ink itself, I really haven't seen any difference in. It's not as if this was created to be archival or anything. This is really just created for quick illustrations. I see a lot of people who like to do character creation with them because it's fast, it's easy, it gets the job done really fast. And as you can see, you can do this really, really fast. You don't have to sit there and finagle with it. You can actually blend these. You can blend all these colors if you really want to take the time. Wait, if I'm going to do that, I might as well get that one. And I kind of liked that little piece that came off the side, and as you can see, it has disappeared under the darker ink now. Get this back in its spot. Let's see, get us that's kind of a pinky red. Let's get the red. Get the red on. Whoops, that's the bullet mark. Yeah. So yeah, here we go. We're gonna get that on there. that darker outline as the fire starts to dissipate, and fire, believe it or not, gets darker as it starts to cool, which naturally it would do on the edges as it gets away from the main source of burning. Now let's see, how do we want to do the background of this? We've got our fire. Let's go back to sunflower yellow. It's kind of orange-ish, and get some glow going here. Because let's face it, fires put off a nice warm glow. It's one of those things that people like about fire. It puts off warmth, it puts off light, it makes everything kind of glowy. Those of us who like to take baths surrounded by candles know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't usually have the time for a simple bath, but when I do, there are probably candles involved, because I might not want them on the bathtub itself, but maybe just scattered around the room. Give that ambiance. Fill the air with nice, comforting lights and smells. Let's see, we're looking at nighttime, and it's only appropriate that behind that glow is darkness. So let's get that blue 12. It's pretty nice. And we'll just go back with that glow. It's a shame that we're covering up some of that feathered edge we got. That looked pretty nice. Oh well. It's a sketchbook. It's not like this is going up for sale or something, huh? And that is another reason I have the page behind. You saw what I did? I caught that on the edge of the paper, and yeah, you can see how this kind of goes through the paper a little bit. But hey, here we go. That is a quick, simple, bright, colorful flame. Let's see. Oh, good. Starting to say, I thought I had left all of my Sharpies at the front where I like to sign things. This is number 31, and I believe it was flames, but I'm going to double check because I like to do it right. Nope, just fire. Fire! You're fired. I'm fired. We're all fired. We're all fired up for this being the end of Inktober. And don't get me wrong, I like Inktober. I like the prompts. I like keeping up with it all. I like seeing other people's ideas for the same word, and it's just a single word. But I usually have a hard time keeping up, and I end up doing an entire week's worth in one day. So at that point, it becomes a little tiresome. Not because I don't enjoy the challenge, but just because I'm often quite busy. But anyway, that is the last page of my Inktober. I hope you enjoyed this little draw along slash preview, or I guess post view, of the month of October's Inktoberfest festivities, if you call them that. And I've not forgotten what I'm up to. I am working on the octopus. I simply ran into a bit of a motivational problem because my workroom behind me here was so filled with crafting things that I just couldn't do it. It just dragged on the back of my mind, and I could not come back here and work. I've gotten most of this cleared up, sorted out, thrown out, whatever it took. So hopefully I will get back to the octopus, which I have half filmed. I'm not sure if it's going to end up being one video or two, but we're definitely going to get back to that, and I have other projects lined up, so maybe I won't get to this every single week, but I am going to, at the very least, get one a month, at the very least. Try very hard to, and not go an entire year without filming. So, for now, this is Sharon Alexander, Alexander Arts, and if you really did enjoy this, please do like. If you really want to see more, please subscribe, and I will see you next time.